Welcome to Mech Talks, brought to you by the Mechanical Engineering Sectional Committee of the Institution of Engineers, Sri Lanka.
First, we must understand what is it that is in our hands. So let's talk a little bit about what do we mean to society. If you look at what has happened over the years, last 300-400 years, the way we live has completely different today than say 300-400 or 500-600 years ago. Of course, it is originated with the great thinkers, the scientists like Newton and Gauss and others who came up with these principles of science that enabled people like you and I to put that into practice. So I want to emphasize this word practice, as you will understand from my talk as I go on, why this word practice is important. But if you look at how we live today, scientists have contributed enormously the way we live. I think most of you are about the age of 25, and so therefore you can remember when you were a child, how were the things in the country? How were the things in the world? How did we communicate? How did we go around? What was our medical care like? So those who are older than that will remember there was a time we were going around in buggy carts. But over the years, all these things changed because the science have contributed to the way we live, the humanity. And then, if you look at the last 70 years, that means after World War II, if you look at that period, you will see there was exponential growth of the utilization of scientific knowledge for the benefit of the people. So today, even the fact that you and I are communicating through Zoom is an effort that has been made by scientists. Then the engineers put that into practice to make these things happen. So therefore, we must understand that science has played a key role in our life. But science alone would not have done this if someone you did not figure out how to use this scientific knowledge and put into practice. And that was the the applications oriented people. That is you and me and other engineers around the world. So engineers made these things, this knowledge that the scientists developed, they put into practice, and that's what made a huge difference in the way we live. Because if the science remained in the laboratories, nothing would have happened. Science would be still there. So we will have been very knowledgeable in science, but nothing would have come out of this science until we put that into practice. So we have to be proud as engineers that we have contributed immensely how we live, how the humanity lives in the world. Now let's look at some of the things that has happened. If you go through one by one, just in your mind, just go through one by one. I remember when I was a student, like in the university level, and even before that, we remember we used to work with transistors, and today we are talking to each other on WhatsApp and other things. So, and where did this happen? Where does this development happen? It doesn't matter what development we look at, whether it's a transistor, the microwave oven, the MRI machines, or communications, and even things like, things that really, I don't know how useful these are, but things like Facebook. But all these things happen in America, in the United States. And I'm not saying this because I live and work here, but there's a reason why these things happen in the United States. Every one of the major development in the world happened right here in America, in the United States. And even then, most of that development happened in California, in the Northern California, Silicon Valley. And some of the medically related things happen in the East Coast, in Boston area, and also in Texas. So there are these focal points where these things happen, all this development happen. And so therefore we have uh, to find out why did this happen in this very specific country and why it happened in these specific places. In the last several years, since I have been working on the sort of social aspects of my professional career, uh, I have put a lot of thought into trying to understand what is the reason why it is happening here. So end of the day, I came out with the following conclusion. The conclusion is in the world, there are three main kinds of people. That is, the people, I divided them into three. Now, there may be others, but this is a very rough division of these three kinds of people. I'm only talking about science here, not nothing else. No, not politics, not other things. There are three kinds of people. That is, one kind is the why kind of people. The next kind is the how kind of people. And the next kind is the what kind of people. So let's look at each one separately. The why kind of people are the great scientists of the past and the present. For example, the names I mentioned, like Einstein or Newton, these are the why kind of people. They were very curious why something is happening. Why did the apple fall to the ground? This is the mind, their mind works always asking the question why. Now, that still continues. Most of us who have done PhDs also look into why something is happening and try to come up with some sort of a answer, some sort of explanation why things are happening. Most of these PhDs, we do that. So the people who are why kind category still exist. Now, of course, very good thing that happened recently was the development of the vaccine. That it was very basic science, the RNA, DNA, all that happened, which was found, which was discovered in the United States, and then this person at California, University of California, Berkeley, figured out CRISPR technology, and then from there's all these things ended up with. First, of course, is why it is happening, then end up with what we have done today, which is the vaccine. So the why kind of people are the very people who are very curious why something is happening. Then comes how kind of people. Now that is all of you, all of me, including myself. We are how kind of people. When somebody says to do something, we know how to do it. That means we engineers, if they tell us to build a bridge, we know how to build a bridge. If they tell us to design a machine, we know how to design a machine. So if they tell us to design an elevator or whatever thing they want us to do, we basically know how to do that. Both mechanical engineers, civil engineers, electrical engineers, chemical engineers, we are masters of this game of how to do stuff. So that is the how kind of people. That is you and I and everybody else. Then comes the what kind of people. Now, earlier I mentioned how our lives change over the years. In the last 70 years, our lives change. We are living in a different world. And as time goes on, our life will continue to change. The things we do will continue to change. Okay. So these are the people who are what I call what kind of people. These are the people who figured out what to do. Okay. What should we do so that we can make a huge contribution, huge change in humanity? These are the what kind of people. Now I'll give you throw some names like Microsoft chairman, okay, Bill Gates, or Apple guy, or or PayPal, uh, Elon Musk, and all these people who came up with this very simple ideas, but it changed the way we live. The guy who did the WhatsApp, okay, and so these people figured out what is it that we have to do now when we can make how we live, how the way we live in this world different, better. Okay. So this what kind of people make a huge difference in the way we live. So there are these three kinds of people I came into. Now, where did this happen? Even the people who did of the people who did this were people not American. They are immigrants. Elon Musk came from South Africa. He comes here, goes to school here, and then he figures out what to do. For example, I think you remember what he did in the beginning. We were using our credit card to buy something on the internet, and that was not very secure. So he came out with PayPal. So you give your credit card one time to PayPal, and whenever you are buying something, PayPal does all the buying. They send the money. So we are safe. Um, I don't know how much he sold his company. I know it was several billions of dollars, but it made a huge difference. We were. And so a lot of these things that happened here were taught by people who figured out what is it that we have to do. Now, do you have to be a scientist to do it? or an engineer to do it. No, no. Anybody can do it. Anyone can figure out what is it that we have to do, and then they can use the how kind of people to make it happen. So if I figure out what should I do in order uh, to alleviate a human's medical problem, which is my area of expertise, then if I don't know how to do it, then I can go someplace else, tap into some knowledge base somewhere else around the world, including India and China. So they are the people who will actually do the work. So this is how kind of people. So understanding these three is very, very important. The reason it is important is I think I have hopefully enticed you to become a what kind of person, because all your life so far you have been uh, how kind of person, because you are engineers, and so you know what to do, you know how to design stuff, you know how to build stuff, and so that is how. Now is the time saying how, what can we do in order to change humanity, in order to make it better, right? Now, on the other hand, you are in Sri Lanka, and Sri Lanka, the country needs to go to the next level. I mean, if you look around other countries of our size, if you look at Singapore, Israel, South Korea, Taiwan, these are countries which are similar in our size, but they have advanced very well in the world. Their economy has grown, and this growth of their economy happen not just purely by the government. Government has a role. Government has a role to run the country, but it is our responsibility, our role. We have to figure out what is it that we individually and collectively should do in order to take the country forward to the next level. That is in our hands. That is in the hands of scientists and engineers and non-engineers and everybody. But you and I being engineers, so we have a special skill, and if we can figure out what is it that we have to do now to propel our country to the next level, then that's something we can do. And so in today's, I want to discuss how is it that we will become what kind of people, okay? So basically we are talking about innovation or inventions. So there are these two terms that sometimes are used not quite accurately. So one is invention, and the other is innovation. When it comes to invention, it is based on the doctrine of equivalence. That means uh, you cannot come up with an idea that is equivalent to something else that has been done in the past. It cannot be. So if there is equivalence of something that you came up with today and it's equivalent to something else in the past, that is not an invention. So if you have a chair with three legs and you come up with a chair with four legs, that is not an invention. Then innovation is something where you come up with new ideas in the process of innovation that uses existing knowledge, some of which can be inventions, to come up with a new product or service. That is an innovation. So most part, everything that happens in the world are innovations. So where it's probably a ratio of 1 to 10 or something like that. So innovation. Now, here's another term that I like to bring into this discussion. You all will think that inventions are important. And then, of course, innovations are important because innovations make real products, real services. So that have a market. That's a marketable product. So that therefore there's a revenue stream based on the innovation. Third point I want to bring to this discussion is branding. What is more important, invention, innovation, or branding? Now, this is debatable. If you look at Dilma tea, for example, their brand is known world over. Even when I go to a cafe in Houston, uh, right in front where you get your coffee, there are boxes and boxes of Dilma tea sitting there. So when I go looking for a cup of coffee and I see the Dilma tea in front in a box, I change my mind and I have Dilma tea. So because Dilma somehow made a brand of itself. Now, maybe you innovated something that you make several hundred thousand millions of rupees, dollars, whatever, But Dilma is making 10 times, 15 times, 20 times more money just by branding their product. They have a good product, they branded it. So when you look at these three things, invention, innovation, and branding, remember, all these are important. So therefore, you cannot say, I'm only going to be an innovator and not brand my product, or you can say, I'm only going to brand my product and not innovate anything. So therefore, please keep in mind that all these three things are important, and you must pursue to excel in the field that you have taken into. So there are some factors that help with these things. So I have been thinking and researching about what is it, why is it that everything happens here? So all these innovations, all these inventions, all the new things that come out of the world is coming out in here. So I've been thinking about it and said, I came up into the following conclusion. There are four important characteristics. That is, number one is innovation culture. So in America, there is inherent innovation culture. That means everybody, whether it is children, whether it's kids who are going to high school, or university students, professionals, engineers, doctors, people like myself, we are constantly thinking, how can we make this thing better? We do not want to be second to anybody. So when we make something, if we feel that mine is not as good as the other person, then I have lost. So this culture of competitiveness to making it better, solving a problem better so you can have a better result, that culture of competitiveness, that innovation culture is inherent in this country. So therefore, this sort of culture, I believe, is something I would hope that we start building in Sri Lanka. That means that you and I and everybody else, we get together and say, how can we build this innovation culture? So this has to happen, and I'll come to that in a few minutes about where we should start that. Second thing is innovation infrastructure. Of course, this is very obvious. You need the place, you need the facilities, you need the infrastructure. So you need a place where you can get together and innovate the infrastructure. Now I have to tell you something about that. That is 30, 40 years ago when I got started as an entrepreneur, there wasn't the kind of infrastructure we have today. Today in Houston, there are something like 20 or 30 incubators. I am an advisor in quite a few of those incubators. But 20, 30, 30, 40 years ago, that didn't really exist. That means there were really no quote unquote incubators. So I started in my garage. And after I came to a certain point, I went and rented out a small space where I started my office. So the concept of incubator didn't happen. So sometimes I think about it myself. Is the infrastructure that critical? Well, 30 years ago, it may not have been critical, but today's this connected world, I think incubator is an important factor, or having the infrastructure is an important factor. The third is the teamwork. One of the biggest problems lacking in Sri Lanka is the lack of teamwork. And we all know how important teamwork is. If we play cricket with some other country, it's just one cricketer cannot win a game. The cricket team, the 11 people and that team, have to work as a team in order to win the game. So in all sport, not only in cricket, in every sport, it is the team that wins the game. And when the team wins the game, each individual player feels that he won the game, and the country feels that they won the game. So this teamwork is what made these teams win against other countries. And Sri Lanka has been at the top of the game for many, many, many years, although I'm not a strict follower of cricket anymore. I know Sri Lanka has a reasonably good cricket team, although most of the people I talk to, they somehow criticize this. But I believe Sri Lanka has a good cricket team because they play as a team. Okay, so teamwork is important, but teamwork is not something that you can indoctrinate after you finish high school, university, and college, and then you go to work. It's not something you can indoctrinate at that time. Teamwork has to be indoctrinated from grade school, from the kindergarten. When the kindergarten child goes to the kindergarten, you have to teach that child how to work as a team. kindergarten, first grade, third grade, 10th grade, or whatever grade, you teach the kids to work as teams. In my own practice, in my to my students, in my classes are small because they are graduate level courses and there are about 15 students in my class. I divide that 15 students about 4 teams, and each team has to work together and do whatever the homework, the research, the presentations, and everything they have to do. They work as a team. And when that team presents their work, the other teams will grade their work. And likewise, I try to create the sort of teamwork atmosphere. Of course, it is not difficult because the country already is in the teamwork environment. So I'm not creating something new in my graduate level class, but I'm just doing it and making sure that they learn how to work as a team. The teamwork is extremely important in order to propel Sri Lanka forward to the next economy in the world. No? So these three things I just talked about, that means the first is the culture of innovation, innovation culture, infrastructure to some extent, and the teamwork are extremely important in order for us to get ourselves up. Now, the fourth one, I left it as the last one because this one is extremely important. That is education. Now, so in order to for us to build ourselves as a powerhouse, as a global leader in innovation, one thing that is the most important, although I left it as the last point to discuss because that one I'm going to talk more about it, is education. Now, we, uh, most part, in every country that I know of, I mean, India, for example, China, for that matter, the United Kingdom, and other countries in the Western world, they all have a certain system of education. That means a system based on knowledge, facts and knowledge. So you become very knowledgeable, and so based on that knowledge, you get you whatever the qualification you have, and then you're able to do certain things based using that knowledge. I think what the difference between that and here is it's not so much the knowledge that we are after, it is the ability to apply the knowledge. That means whatever you have learned, how can we apply it in real life? Okay. And in the first place, when we are learning something, we have to ask the question, why am I learning this? What is the purpose of learning? Why am I learning calculus? Where is this calculus fit into my life? So I remember as a young student in engineering, I learned calculus, of course. I mean, you just learn calculus and calculus and calculus, differential equations and whatnot, all this calculus. But did I learn, why am I learning this calculus for? What is the use? So this is the difference that is very important. Even when some of you are professors, so teachers, and I think I saw Aruna here somewhere, and both Dr. Madhubashita and Dr. Dulini are teachers, and there may be others. When you stand in front of the class and when you teach something, you have to say, ask yourself, why is the purpose? Why the students learning this? What is the purpose of learning this? So therefore, you have to use. It doesn't matter how simple. If you are in the first grade and you are putting 2 plus 2 together, you have to make the student understand why are you writing number 2 plus sign another 2 and an equal sign and say 4. What is the purpose of this? So you have to come and bring it to a real life situation. Why you are learning this? That is the key to being able to use this knowledge eventually when you get out of college and go to work and become an employer. You employ yourself or you become entrepreneur yourself, or whatever thing that you eventually do. It is that aspect of learning that becomes helpful. And I learned that because during my early stages of learning, undergraduate learning, of course, I did my undergraduate overseas. So, and when I came here, then I started with my master's degree. So when I went to master's degree, one thing that really puzzled me was I took my first class. I think it was first class was like distillation or some class like that. I sat in the class. This is a 3-hour lecture. The professor comes in And he talks for about 20 minutes about what we need to learn about all these things. And he gives homeworks and he leaves. And I said, what's going on here? Is he not going to teach us? And with time, I realized that what he's just our guide. We're supposed to learn. So there's a book. We're supposed to read the book. We're supposed to learn the book. We're supposed to do this exercise he gave us. And then we had to talk to each other among my classmates and figure out what is this all about. And so that went on when I got into do the master's courses in the university. So I got used to it. Early on, I got used to it. But that training to me was quite important because whatever the thing that I learned, I learned with the idea of where am I going to use this? Okay. It doesn't mean that eventually when I came out of college and went to work that I used everything I learned. No, that never happened. But I am today learning whatever whenever I have a problem to solve, I always think back in my learning process. How does my learning process can be used in solving this problem? Now, these are problems that cannot be solved by how kind of person, because these problems have not been solved before. So I'm trying to solve problems that not been solved before. So therefore, I have to use my basic knowledge. So this education, the way we educate ourselves, is very important. So I talk about this thing now. Next thing that we need to talk about is what can we do as a nation to get ourselves from where we are to the next level. Now, I don't have to tell you, you already know the country had a setback because of the pandemic and also the economy. So the country really needs your help. You are the engineers, you are the driving force to take this country forward. So you guys, what I would hope would do is you get together as teams and meet up, and you can even make it a social gathering or place where you go and have a drink and talk about what is it that we can do to make sure that we are coming up with new ideas. Okay. Now, in order to do that, something I really want to insist to you about is do not think local. You do not want to think local. You have to think global. Today is a global economy. No, you cannot. In this global economy, you cannot think local. You have to solve the problems of the globe, of the world. Okay. And if you solve the problem of the world, it doesn't matter you thought about in Sri Lanka. Google will come, or Microsoft will come, or any of these big corporations will come to you and say, yeah, we want that idea. And we are willing to pay you $1 billion for this idea. Okay. Because this country, these people, they don't care where it is coming from. They only care whether it is useful, the idea is useful or not. As you probably know, most of these big corporations are run by Indians, and these Indians came like like me to go to graduate school, get a master's degree, and most of these Indians never got a PhD. They did a master's degree. They went to work for Apple or Microsoft or Google, and look where they are. So it doesn't matter who you are. If you can produce and come up with the answer, that's all that matters. So sitting in Sri Lanka, you can you can come up with ideas at the global level, that into the global market. So don't forget that. Okay. So I think that is pretty much the message that I want to give you. My talk today was not quite the speeches that I normally give because everybody today is somebody like myself. On Saturday, I gave a talk at Muratu University. They were students, so I talked to them in a little bit different way. But today, you and I are equal. So I'm talking to you as like a fireside chat. So it's like I have told you certain things. You can tell me what I should be doing. So therefore, I appreciate uh, Dr. Madhubashita and Dr. Dulini for inviting me to connect with you. So therefore, I stop here, and maybe I'll try to answer some of the questions.